Let me just cut to the chase. Do you own FIFA 20? Do you own FIFA 19? Hell, do you own FIFA 18? If you answered yes to any of those, do not buy FIFA 21. If you answered no to all of them, you should still not buy FIFA 21. It shouldn't come as a surprise that this year's annual installment of one of EA's many sports game franchises is raising no eyebrows other than those of their shareholders. But this game is bad. And not just typical EA sportsball yearly release circle jerk bad, I mean that it's genuinely not even fun to play in its own right. While they actually made a few decent additions to career mode for the first time ever, the game is completely ruined by its match engine, with all its focus on attacking dynamism and a complete lack of regard for anything to do with competent defending, which proves to be nothing but a boring goal fest. The visuals are the same, the animations are the same, bar the handful of new goal celebrations they added, and the disappointment of giving EA their annual $80 entry fee is no different either, as they continue to show that they're not for the fans, they're for the profits. If you've seen my previous ramblings about the last few FIFA games, then it won't come as a shock that my review will be more focused on career mode and the match engine itself, while Volta mode and the never-ending money printer that is FIFA Ultimate Team will be paid little attention. And you know what? I'll start positive with a look at the new FIFA
21
career mode features, because EA actually made it look like they tried this year. And by that I mean they just ripped a bunch of stuff off Football Manager. The best of the new additions is the new player development mechanics, allowing you to set specific specialized development routines and to help shape the trajectories of young players in particular. I actually really like this. It allows you to focus on improving certain player attributes as well as even allowing you to change a player's natural position. You can even improve a player's weak foot, skill moves and work rates if they're on a particular setting. They did just rip most of the position names straight from Football Manager, but it still makes development a lot more natural and means that you don't have to hyper-focus a few players through training drills. Speaking of which, training drills are different too. Players now have a sharpness rating, just like Football Manager, which with a higher value will improve their stats and vice versa. Again, this is a nice added touch of realism that also makes you think twice before throwing a new player or a player returning from injury straight into the starting lineup. Sharpness is raised by playing games as well as completing training drills, which have been completely overhauled. You can no longer use them to raise stats of high potential youth players by 15 overall a season, which some people might not like, but it's certainly more balanced. The higher rating you get in the drill, the more sharpness the participating players get from it, though you can just simulate the drill at the highest grade you've achieved, meaning that if you get an A once, you'll never have to actually do it again. Isn't that kind of counterintuitive to the idea of a training drill? You know, the idea that repeating a task over and over again lets you perfect it? Also, if you've never graded before, you'll just auto-sim a D, forcing you to do it at least once with a decent grade. Considering how frequent training drills are, being every 2 days of the calendar barring game days and rest days before and after them, it makes sense to let people just sim them, but it should be like the old training drills. You either do them or you just get a random grade, not just do them once and get a perfect score for doing nothing after that. The exact same morale mechanic is in FIFA
21
from the previous game, and it's as easy to get super high morale as it ever was. Press conferences and interviews are just a way to get free morale, as there is clearly an option that improves it and one that lowers it. Player conversations are also just free morale because you can just promise you'll play someone at some point and never actually do it with no repercussions. I really wanted to see morale balanced this year, but they didn't touch it at all. The Youth Academy system is much the same, though less broken with the changes to training drills, although you'll now also start with a bunch of players already in it, and in my Oldham save, I started with this 17-year-old who was already better than all of the other players on my team. Look at this kid, he's unstoppable. He scored 18 goals from 10 games in centre mid, and he doesn't even take penalties. And to prove that this wasn't a fluke, on my second career mode run, I had another kid almost exactly the same. And to go one further, on my third, I got another player who looked identical to him. And to round off the new career mode features, just in case you thought they weren't ripping off Football Manager enough, they added a 2D view for match sims. It does make match simming a little more interesting, and it also lets you jump in and take control of the game, which I thought would be OP but was actually quite disorienting. But it's still more or less just like playing one of those ultra bootleg Football Manager mobile games. Overall, I guess I can't really say that I'm all that disappointed by the career mode additions, and to give credit where it's due, EA would have deserved some praise for the slight amount of effort that they put into it. But it's all been cancelled out by how badly they fucked up the match engine. Defending in FIFA has been absolutely dreadful for many years, but in FIFA 21, it basically no longer exists. EA have spent all of their time making attacking easier with controlled runs in the final third and much better close control, and have not only completely ignored the defensive side of the game, but evidently gone out of their way to make it worse. Defensive positioning is non-existent. Attackers will be given boundless space to roam in. Defenders will not even attempt to mark or go with players inside the box, and midfielders will have to be manually dragged back to even attempt to help out when you're under siege. Through balls straight up the middle are even more potent, but due to how defenders basically move away from attackers in the box, 95% of goals you'll score will fit the same pattern. Win the ball back, counter, cut across, tap in. More or less every time you go forward, you score. It's boring. It's goalfest after goalfest after goalfest. I was having an average of 7 goals scored per game, with me scoring 5 a game and averaging 2 conceded. And this is on ultimate difficulty. I had simultaneously the best attack and the worst defense in the league. And before I hear you say, yeah, but it's because you're playing in the lower leagues, well, the Premier League's not much better. And even though it is worse in the lower leagues, why is that a counter-argument? That certain leagues are more broken? Is that meant to make the game good? For me and plenty of other career mode fans, the appeal is to start with a small club and work my way up. Why should I have to wait until I get to the Premier League before the average goals per game goes down from 7 or 8 to 5 or 6? There's no challenge, no point trying to defend properly. It's simply boring. What many people who dislike football fail to understand, especially fans of other codes of sport here in Australia, is that having high-scoring matches doesn't necessarily make them entertaining.
Nah, mate, I don't watch the soccer. I only watch sports where they score 100 bloody points a game, mate. That's the real footy.
A 1-0 win, hell, even sometimes a 0-0 game can still be exciting. And then when you do have those games with high scorelines every now and again, they're a spectacle. But not when every single game ends up like that. Goalkeepers always find a way to make themselves worse every year, and FIFA 21 is no different. They get beat at their near post far too easily. It's often more effective to just shoot near post than it is to shoot across the face. Keepers really just need to stop doing this dive animation. This kind of dive never saves anything. EA have also talked up the new collision system that stops players from tripping over each other all the time, but really, nothing changed. One positive is that heading has actually been re-added to the game after it was removed in FIFA 20, and having corners actually poses an attacking threat again, though also basically means you'll concede a goal if you let the opposition launch a counter-attack. I can't help but feel that EA simply don't playtest their games. Surely someone could have realized how pathetically bad defending was in the match engine before they released it. But in all honesty, they probably did and gave it the all okay anyway. As mentioned previously, I really don't care much for Ultimate Team nor how EA abuses it, but it's more or less identical to last year's game with a slightly new interface and still plenty of ways to prey on people with too much money or too little self-control. I did actually play one match of Ultimate Team online, but then I got auto-DC'd at halftime for clipping my recording on my second monitor. I didn't even alt-tab, but hey, auto-forfeiting me sure seems like a perfectly reasonable thing to do. I also don't care a whole lot for Volta, but do find it a relatively fun alternative to the 11-a-side match engine, and oh boy did I need a break from it this year. But again, it really hasn't changed at all since the last game. I don't care for the story mode it comes with either. Does anyone actually care about this? Visually, the game looks more or less identical other than the new kits, 1 or 2 new game faces, and a new color palette for the menus, which is the stock standard for a FIFA release. The commentary is still better when turned off, and the crowds in stadiums are all the same, although for some reason all of the people in the Australian A-League crowds are Asian, which isn't as weird as the fact that there are people in the stands at all at a Brisbane Roar game. The game's hardly bug-free either, stat pop-ups being totally wrong all the time, and my manager manager kept turning from what I made him look like into this generic bald guy for negotiation cutscenes as well. FIFA 21 is also on Steam now, which normally I'd say that more games moving to a singular platform is a bad thing as it allows for easier monopolization of the market, but it means that EA gets less of a cut from sales, so they can get fucked. Otherwise, it's EA's typical low-effort, high-profit formula that's been working for them for so long. And at the end of the day, I'd like to say that I still enjoy playing FIFA games, despite all of EA's bullshit. But this one is not even fun. When there's an average of 7 goals a game, you basically score every time you go forward, and it's not even worth your time trying to defend. There's no challenge, no excitement, and no fun. And I know that going after EA and FIFA is easy. It's like saying cancer is bad. There's hardly a moral high ground to take here. And before I get the eventual comment of, well, if you hate FIFA so much, why did you buy it? Well, would you prefer I review the game without buying it? I mean, it's not like EA's gonna give me a review copy for free. Plus, I tend to make the money back in ad revenue, so I guess I basically do get it for free, right? I've already talked many times about why EA gets away with this every year. How they exploit the nature of football player transfers and seasonal updates. How they have a stranglehold over most of the licensing for clubs and leagues, along with the fact that their only genuine competitor is fucking Konami. It's easy for them to maintain a fan base and monopoly. But I cannot recommend that anybody buys this game. I know that I made a pretty poorly worded argument last year in favor of people who are looking forward to the database updates and new transfers for their favorite clubs and players, but I'll be blunter this year. Do not buy this game, do not give EA more money. EA do not care about making a genuinely good game. They do not care about the wants and needs of the consumers, and they do not care about you. They care only for their shareholders and the fat stacks of money that they walk away with every year from FIFA, Madden, and every other annual sports game cash grab they shit out. Like I said, FIFA 21 raises no eyebrows, and unless you get your kicks from scoring 10 goals a game or making unnecessary purchases, you're best to keep it entirely off your radar.